So, welcome to this episode of New Narratives with Ashley Sumner, who's a former matchmaker, community builder, serial entrepreneur in the wellness space, an NLP practitioner, and writer. And I'm really excited to have you on because I see you as one of those humans who is very intentional and thoughtful about the way you move through the world and how you create, how you build, and how you build relationships and companies. And though I'm still just getting to know you, you are definitely somebody that came into my heart mind as I was considering who'd be fun to talk to about non-traditional relationship journeys. And so I would love to kick us off with the question of just like, what's alive right now? Like, what is on your heart in terms of this topic of relationships, whether that be romantic, platonic, collaborative? Like, what's alive for you? What's up here?
Mm, Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Um, I've actually been thinking I've had more space recently to think and feel. I've intentionally given myself a bunch of space, which may come up more later, but I've been thinking a lot about um, how we, for me, and I think for all people, shoot like inherent these stories about exactly what our like relationship paths are supposed to look like, and then carry shame when it if it doesn't look that way. And it is alive for me today, um, as I just continue to grow so much through my connections with other people,
Mm.
and how much I like adore the opportunity to grow in connection or in reaction or it only when it comes to other people, because if I go hang out by myself, really, like it's very like it's very calm and peaceful.
Totally.
um so things feel really good for me right now. I feel really like grounded and rooted in my relationships, and that's kind of, I guess, what's on my kind of heart specifically today is the gratitude
Mm.
around that, because it certainly has not always been that way. So
Uh-huh. Yeah.
happy to be here in this moment today and open to however it wants to change.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's true that oftentimes like the good work gets evoked in the relational context. And so I'm curious, it sounds like right now you're in a moment of ease and nourishment with most of your relationships. What are you noticing in terms of some of the things that you're getting from your relationships in terms of how you're growing and what you're learning about yourself?
Mm. Yeah, it was interesting. I'll share a story because it specifically pertains to the question. A few months ago, I had more time on my hands, and I decided to go to Europe, and thought I was going to be traveling around Europe, and found myself just spending a whole bunch of time in the city Lisbon, which, I think more people are talking about, and for good reason. And it really kind of very quickly became like it felt like a home for me. And yes, the streets are beautiful, the culture is beautiful, the people are beautiful. Like it's really everything everyone describes it to be, the nature. But something had happened. I got super sick, a stomach ache, and like super sick. And I had only been there for a few weeks. I'd made a few friends, met a few people, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, so many people reached out and like really took care of me, like really took care of me. I got care packages, and I was, accompanied to the private hospital. I wouldn't have been able to speak the language, like, sweet messages, lunches made for me, like so many things. I was like, whoa. And at first I wanted to be like, wow, Lisbon's so great. And Lisbon is so great. But I think that that's me evolving a lot when it comes to receiving other people. And I've worked 36 years on that inherited pattern of feeling like I got to do things alone, and it came so easily and so naturally. And so I'm really continuing to focus right now on how I can ground and feel so secure inside of myself that I'm able to receive that. And it's not that I give, 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 and I'm okay and don't need, need, need. And so that's kind of the new dance that I'm in.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. It's really, I think it's one that's really resonant personally, but also I just see a lot of people who are socialized as women specifically, like really, really struggle with this and like how it's such a vulnerable place to be seated and yet could be so rewarding when actually it's happening and you're like, okay, I can receive this support. I mean, obviously in this instance, you were quite sick and like really probably just needed it. What do you see any other things that like helped you to really take up the space of I'm gonna just receive? Like, was it something that you were actively practicing or it just came naturally because you were sick? Like, what was that like?
Um, you know, I love how like spiritual lessons work, right? It's for me, it's like intellectual understanding for like 15 years, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I get it. Like something in, something drops down and you get it. And um whatever. But before then it's just a meme that's going around in your head. And I have always been like very aware of the concept that the more in connection I am with myself, the more in connection with others I am too. Like I get it. I know there aren't that many like universal truths in the world, and that's one of them. Like I get it. Um, this I think comes off of the tail of really choosing things that are authentic for me and the universe responding and rewarding me quickly.
Mm,
And I have noticed that it's like when you take that very uncomfortable leap, there's like a flood that can kind of come in. So it's not lost on me that as soon as I gave myself space and kind of chose to have more stillness and more kind of I don't, solitude's not the right word, but just like genuinely quiet time with me that led to like a quick flight and a this and a that. Like I got
mm,
me into my own flow,
mhm,
and that flow just started bringing the things in without effort.
mhm, mhm,
And so by the time I was saying yes to receiving that, there was an effortlessness that I was in.
mm, mhm.
And I do think I actually got sick because I was like kind of cleansing
Ah,
some of the things that I had chosen to sign up for so long that really had expired in my system.
I like that framing. Yeah. Yeah, that's beautifully put. Like this idea about when you're really in alignment with yourself and your path, that it is not effort to continue then to like be supported as you make those moves. But it's that kind of initial leap of faith that's the hard part. And then you receive the support when the alignment's there.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So this is sort of a hard pivot, but not really. It might segue. Let's
Yeah,
see.
yeah,
I just was thinking about your history as a matchmaker and how, you know, it's a very kind of particular lens within which to view relationships and partnerships and so on. And I'm curious how your perspective on what it even means to like partner people, like if you'd like how has your stance about romantic relationships shifted since you were doing matchmaking, or has it shifted?
um I mean, it's shifted because I've shifted. That was 15 years ago. It's I don't know how many 21-year-old matchmakers exist, but like I was like a baby. But also I was so raw in my talent. I was so, I didn't have enough time to overthink it. It was just like I was good. I was like quickly quite good at making these connections. I have shifted a lot. At the time, for me personally, I was not taking the concept of intimacy and um, choice, like deep choice, when it comes to relationships, romantic relationship. I wasn't thinking at the time about becoming a mom one day. That's recently kind of become a consideration for me. So I was just very young and felt like I could feel people and feel like what would be the most kind of nourishing for them in their current state.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I knew at the time that choosing romantic partners was like a deeply spiritual choice. Like I remember being like, this is going to be a great lesson for this person. Like, this person's for sure ready for this lesson. And I knew about, because I did some developmental psychology in school, like I knew about some of the early stages impacting some of the choices that we would make and birth patterns and all that kind of stuff. So I actually played a lot with that then.
Wow.
But I think for me now, I see something personally that I didn't see then, which was the amount of freedom that can exist inside relationships
Mm.
and the amount of like how much an identity can evolve in relationship. So I think I was kind of an outside perspective looking in, being like, oh, these types of people want to have want to commit a relationship, sure. And there was a part of me that I think thought that that was like an ordinary path to take.
Uh-huh.
And I see a lot of beauty in the ordinary now and a lot of like softness and growth in the ordinary now. And I didn't
Mm.
see that then.
Ah, that's beautiful. So at the time you were not like entirely side-eyeing it, but just like, okay, this is pretty typical. And now you're like, ah, like there's an appreciation for what that offers. So like kind of a full circle in your own perspective around it. That's beautiful. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about, you had kind of kicked off the call with saying like there are these ideas we inherit about how things should go, whether that be the ordinary path or a certain trajectory,
Yeah.
and that there can be oftentimes shame when the path looks different than we expect. So I'm curious about where you are right now with that, and like um, what it is that your heart longs for, and like what it is that you are holding in terms of what you inherited, and how you're seeing it for yourself now in terms of what you want.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting because I thought that I didn't inherit anything for a while because I've been a precocious human being since I was little and like made up my own mind about stuff, which is true.
Mhm.
But also I was raised by a single mom. Like the moment my mother was pregnant with me when she became single, so I was born into such a clear kind of in some ways non-relationship style. She didn't remarry. Like, I have a relationship with my father, but it already was pretty non-traditional. Um, and like not such a primary focus that I thought, oh, that's my goal in life.
Mhm.
So, I was a girl who didn't think about her wedding.
Uh-huh.
Like, I was a young woman who in my first serious relationship, like didn't when asked what I'd want as an engagement ring in like a playful way, I was like, I don't know. Like it just I didn't build the stories in that
Mhm.
way. So I thought I didn't have stories.
Mhm.
Um, what really was taking place was like I was I call it the original heartbreak. I was
Mhm.
navigating the original heartbreak of like not having a super present father and therefore assuming that I wouldn't end up in a unit,
Mhm.
that like I wasn't worthy of a unit.
Mhm.
Even to this day, as I say it, I'm consciously like, wasn't it? But no, it really, it really is this kind of like, if you're going to make it, you're going to do it on your own early thought.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, so when it comes to those like inherited stories, I do find myself in this place of not considering like this or that right or wrong, like having a lot of compassion for how my journey has unfolded to get me to a place of just deeply appreciating like intimate connection and like
Yeah.
however that wants to present itself to me. And currently hearing a lot of my friends, I have a lot of single friends currently, repeating this idea that there's going to be an arrival, that like life starts at this like arrival, and I think that that's a very big risk and expectation to place, because where I don't know exactly where we're like arriving to.
Mm,
Um, so I don't know if I answered your question, but those are kind of those are some of the elements on a very personal level that I find myself navigating.
mhm.
Um, and what I'm kind of hearing, particularly among my closest friends, and like
Yeah.
what their hopes and dreams are. There is that like that idea that there's going to be a place that we arrive to.
Mm, mhm, mhm. It's making me think about this notion of like false refuge in some way, like this idea that we place our sense of we can take refuge in something that is ever changing, right? Like relationships are ever changing, we're ever changing. Like we can't, there's nothing stable there. And yet, of course, it can provide some semblance of stability and consistency. And um, yeah, which is true. It's like the both and, but it sounds like what you're talking about with the arrival that you're maybe not subscribing to is this idea of like, I know that I can't take a refuge in starting my life at this particular moment. Like, I need to keep living my best life. Is that,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's to me, I also I come back to like my life theme of the more in connection with myself I am, the greater connection I am to those and all things around me. And so if I'm hoping for something, if I'm waiting for something,
yeah,
I'm not in connection. I'm not in connection with
right,
myself,
right, right.
you know, and when I'm not in connection with myself, experiences and people come into my life to teach me how to get into connection with myself.
Yeah.
And that's where we start to see codependency and trauma bonding, twin flame, whatever some of these terms are that we like are, I think, mostly aware of. People come along as like lessons, and therefore, to me, it goes from connection to attachment.
Mm-hmm.
And now that person's really just there to serve a purpose. Um, And I find myself far more interested in the more in connection I am with myself, the greater I am in connection with other people. I actually place no personal attachments or expectations on those people. And we get to just like walk this life together or not, or we get to walk it for a day or a year or a lifetime. But there's a lot of openness to how that unfolds, and then a lot of personal responsibility. Like it's a huge responsibility for me to say, like, I will do everything I can to stay so close in alignment to myself
Yeah.
that relating to me will run its course however it's meant to.
Right, right. Like that primary commitment is to your authenticity, like your relationship to yourself. And then whatever unfolds relationally is like, will just run its course. And, yeah, I deeply resonate with that stance. And I'm curious, like, in terms of past relationships and like relationships that you've had, um, if you've had any like insights about the role that the attachment system plays, like we bond, right? And then there's of course like the heartstrings get pulled and things get difficult, and it's like part of that kind of fire that we're confronted with. So I'm just curious, like what's your take on that, and how have you experienced the attachment system in relationship to this like more absolute notion of non-attachment generally? It's a big question.
Yeah, let me see if I can talk about that.
Yeah.
Listen, I think the for someone like me to announce my primary commitment is this connection and alignment with myself so that I can show up and be in a healthy connection with others. The shadow to that is obviously like attachment stuff.
Mm.
So I am intimately like aware of the role of attachment style and what all that looks like. I mean, I even remember as a matchmaker
Mm.
reading attached and in college, with my psychology courses, learning about attachment theory. So I'm aware of it. How has it played a role? It is, I've experienced, I think, all of it, I guess,
Mhm,
in
mhm,
my lifetime. I'm at the place, I'll name where I am now. Where I am now is my triggers still surface. I can still have like an anxious attachment surface. I can still feel shut down and avoidant, although less. Both of them are way less. But I'm an observer of it.
uh-huh, uh-huh. Like more
Still
awareness
doesn't
about
mean,
what's happening. Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't mean I'm not still having a full on tantrum or, like it's honestly, it also depends on where I'm in my cycle. Like I
Yeah,
am
yeah, yeah.
fully accepting like of my late luteal phase in the first few days of my menstrual cycle to just be like heightened vulnerability moments. So it's not that those vulnerabilities aren't there all the time. It's just like my reserves are less during certain days. Um, so I can be a hypersensitive being during that time. To anyone listening who can relate, just and be tender to yourself during that time. Um, so yeah, I mean, I look at these like this journey of practicing non-attachment, which for the past few years has basically been like my mantra, like peace and ease, practicing non-attachment. It's something that I don't waver on at this moment in my life. Like it's a non-negotiable, whatever you want to call it. And so I'm very clear that when somebody is placing an attachment on me, that's their work. And when I'm placing an attachment on them, that's my work. And that's literally when you start noticing that, you know exactly what your relational patterns are and where your work lies. And I think that's the coolest thing when I'm like, he didn't blah, 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 or she, no. I'm like, oh, got it. Like I have my script, I can look at that, I can go inward, I can see what's going on. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I did just talk a lot about attachment. So
Yeah, no, I think you totally you hit some pretty substantial points in like how you're practicing with non-attachment, and how you see the function of attachment almost as a way to like highlight, here are patterned areas that I can take more responsibility for, and like use that as the gateway to doing the work to stay with myself ultimately.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And where you are now in terms of, obviously holding this stance that relationships may come into your life for different reasons, and we don't get to know how long we get to dance with people. And as we continue to grow and move and evolve, things change and or not, right? So what is like your soul looking to have a bigger experience of in this moment? Like what do you feel excited about in terms of relating and partnering? Like what is it that
Mm.
you feel open to and excited about?
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking to what I said a few minutes ago around like ordinary, I um I feel very excited about kind of the simple ordinary things. Um uh and I also am somebody who wants to experience all things in a lifetime, like as much as possible. And not to the extent of like see every corner of the earth and like a and climb Mount Everest, like maybe. Not no. More my inner world that I want to experience it. And so um yeah, I wanna start a family. I'm like at that place in my life where I'm intentionally not throwing myself into 100 work projects because that's also a form of birthing and creation. To see if I can create this space, just to see if like that's part of my path is to like have a family and do those types of things, which I did think of as like as the ordinary a while ago, but it actually seems quite nourishing to me in this moment.
Mm, that's really beautiful. And how is it for you to like claim that? Like, this is what I'm interested in now. What's it like?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really said it like I've said it among like my closest people, but
Mhm.
I'm like, wow, this is recorded. I can go back and look at this. If honestly, it feels really great. It was another vulnerable thing I'll share is well, it's not that vulnerable, but maybe to the outside world. Like I do these kind of well, I just did a like solo psychedelic journey. So basically that's just like me in my bed with an eye mask and a notebook. And I had like not a lot came forward. I just kind of like laid there and really enjoyed the music. But I just opened the notebook up. Um, I was like, I think I did write like a couple things. And I opened it, and on one big page, it just says, "You're going to be a fucking awesome mom."
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's cool. It's cool to believe that.
Mhm.
I do believe that I've spent a lot of time really deepening into like my practices and my own healing journey. I think in kind of preparation for something like motherhood. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love that that's what it said on the page. Yeah, there,
I was like, I'm gonna print this.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think one thing I'm struck by and appreciating is your confidence in the vision, like your confidence in like, this is what I'm doing now. Like, this is what I'm doing now. And I think for a lot of folks that I've seen, there's oftentimes doubt that will come in when there's some kind of a vision around like, how do I make this happen? Can I make this happen? I don't know if I like know how it's all going to
mm.
come together. So how are you in relationship to that? Because as you're naming it, I'm just hearing the confidence, like it's gonna, this is my path right now. So I'm curious about that.
um, that's a good question because I used to second guess just about everything in my life. um, and if you're familiar with human design, I actually have the doubt
Yeah.
channel,
Oof. Okay.
um, and the mystery channel in my near my ajna, and crown. So, um, again, I've spent the past couple of years becoming very intimately connected with myself. I and we can unpack that. But it's one of those things that I feel like I understand what is for me and what is not for me. I understand that when I don't know, it just means I'm not ready to know yet. Like I'm not trying, I'm more of a destiny believer as long as I'm practicing alignment. I believe that. And when I'm off, like my body really tells me when I'm off. So that used to be a thing that frustrated me because I'm more sensitive to label it. But what a gift, because I'm like, wow, something's off here. Like I've been in relationships where my body has shut down. And in the moments I'm like, oh no, is there something wrong with me? I need to work through this. Like, no, actually, there's so much wisdom in our bodies. And now that I feel super in tune with my body, I'm like, oh no, I can tell that that's what's right for me, or that's what feels good. Um, so yeah, that, and I also, God, it sounds so cliche as I say it out loud, but I've done a heavy amount of shadow work of just kind of being like, instead of working from, which is still running, right? It doesn't go away, but instead of letting this idea that I'm not enough as a person run its course, and therefore doing things to like fill a void, which I think is what gets us so separated from whether or not we are doing, should do the thing, not do the thing, is it right, what's it like, we don't have that power. So for me, I don't really feel like I'm making decisions from that place, the the whole with an HOLE. um yeah.
That makes sense. Like, it sounds like there's
I've never had to put language to this, so sorry. I feel like I'm usually better,
no, this
but
was
I'm happy to like unpack that.
I think you did a great job of like talking about the notion of alignment as sort of being the thing that you're practicing. And ultimately, every time you
Yeah,
practice alignment, the thing that you're seeing it starts to come into being. And like the part that you're not moving from is like overriding the body over, and like you're in a deep relationship where you're
yeah,
listening to know if
yeah.
you're in alignment or not. Mhm.
And the world gives us cues. Like I
Mm,
really think the world gives us cues. Um, and even again, and I'll use the human design reference. I'm a manifester, so I even need less cues technically as an initiator, but the rest of the world, like, follow all the cues you can. And so, you know, I used my body as an example. Like when my body starts to hurt, okay, something's off. Like it's time to retreat and take care of self. But also I notice like if if I'm bumping into something, if I'm tripping, okay, fine. Or if I break something, I don't typically, or I lose something, or I leave something behind, or like these things that start to happen, I'm like, okay, something's off here.
yeah.
Like that's kind of a cue. And I'm like, if things are like boom, 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 and it's all unfolding and everything's just kind of like working out, I'm like, then we keep going.
Uh-huh. Right. So if there's cause to pause, you're pausing and listening based on like what's happening in relationship to your environment and how you're moving in the world. And if you're getting green lights, you just keep going on the path. That's sort of, yeah. I mean, it makes
Yeah.
it sound more simple than it is, but I think it is maybe that simple in some ways.
Yeah. Or it's like if I'm like, ooh, I'm excited about, whatever, this idea of having children, and all of a sudden there's like all these clues in the world that are leaning towards the support of that, then great.
Right. Uh-huh.
I
Take
don't
it
know.
as like, I received the validation for my internal
Yeah, let's
compass.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as we're coming up on our time, I might ask you just one more question. So I guess, and maybe you've already talked some about this, but like, what would you say has been your biggest surprise so far on your relationship journey? Like something that you're like, I would not have guessed this for myself. Any surprises?
Yeah, that's a good one. No, I'm just gonna give you um what's my most honest answer? Um, Surprises. my mind's like going towards two different answers, but as somebody from such a young age, I've always felt like, I don't know, like from the outside looking in, with even within my professional persona, I might come across like a quote unquote feminist or empowered or highly capable or like confident or all of those things, which is not true. But the biggest surprise for me has been finding myself in relationships that don't nourish me.
Just across the
No,
board.
yeah, no longer is that the case. But I have found myself in, I mean, more so romantic, but just like in situations where I found myself getting taken advantage of, like allowing that to happen. And there's a term that one of my teachers, an acronym my teacher in NLP coined, Carl Buckeye, which is like infinite number of do-overs,
Yeah.
IND. And I didn't realize that I'm whatever makes me me, which is partially just like a big time optimist and I see the best in people, but also just whatever makes me me, is that I have that thing running, which is being willing to give people like an infinite number of do-overs. Like if they've done something that really doesn't feel good for me. And no longer, I will say that I learned that lesson very hard, in a very hard way, but no longer. And it surprised me. It wasn't who I thought. I didn't see myself as somebody who was like willing to have her boundaries crossed so much. But I did find myself in some moments where I really did kind of give up myself in order to be in connection, or what I thought was connection. So that surprised me. But it also was my biggest, greatest teacher in this lifetime so far, and part of why I'm here in this moment. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really beautiful. And I love how you put like just having the awareness that you had to give up yourself in order to sustain connection, and then realizing like I never thought I was the person who would do that, and somehow I was doing that and I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, huge. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your
Thank
heart
you.
with us and just offering such a wise and expansive perspective on relationships. And
Mhm.
um, is there anything you want to say before we close?
Well, I love this conversation. I love this topic. I love that you're doing this. So, thank you for that. Um, yeah, I mean, when it comes to relationshiping right now, I'd say the my kind of biggest message is that nobody can be responsible for somebody else's feelings. I think that's like a big thing to remind ourselves, to iterate, to reiterate, that it's even when somebody's like, you made me feel blank, that that's like not possible.
Yeah.
Everyone chooses their own feelings. And the more responsibility we can take for our feelings, while also validating that they're real and come from somewhere, the closer we can be in connection with ourselves and therefore each other. And so that's kind of my banner right now.
Yes. It's perfect wisdom to leave us with. That's yes. +1 to that. So I'm going to hit pause.